What's going on, everyone? So, there are a lot of rumors going around, and there will continue to be a lot of rumors, and we'll touch and talk about some. And, like I always say, take everything with a grain of salt. But one of the big rumors that's going around is that Scream 7 is kind of only the beginning, right? That this is supposed to establish a new trilogy, that no matter what, they want to make more films. Keep hearing that from various sources, various people out there that, like, hey, they definitely want to create more films. And out of all the rumors, out of all the talk, this is the one thing that like I am pretty confident in. I've talked about it for literally since going back to Scream 5 that they'll probably go through Scream 10 minimum, primarily because they purchased the rights and they cost like $500 million and they haven't even made that money back. So they need to make a couple more just to at least break even on the investment. And another big sign is that like they're working so hard to pump out Scream 7 so quickly, even after all the Melissa Barrera stuff and everything, right? Like, if they ever needed time to kind of have a little hiatus, it was after that. But nope, they went and paid Sidney Prescott, or Nev Campbell, which good for her, right? Go get your bag, brought her in, and they're ready to go, right? So it does make a world of sense that they're going to kind of keep pumping out films. But with that in mind, so let's again just go under the assumption that we are set to get a new trilogy. Now, I'm not a big fan of putting the cart before the horse, obviously. And we haven't had this like super successful trend of like, hey, we're going to create a new trilogy and then all the movies are going to be great. I mean, look at like Halloween trilogy. It's like each movie got like progressively worse. Look at Exorcist the Believer. I mean, it was so bad they fired everybody, and they still have two more movies. The Strangers, right? Like it's just we don't really have a good track record in that regard. But Scream could be different, right? Because Scream is very different than a lot of these other horror franchises in the sense of like each film is essentially its own thing, and it's just you're telling a story. You got somebody different under the mask each time. You kind of have your checklist that you need to check off when you're making a Scream film, and then you're good, right? So if this is going to be the beginning of a new trilogy, do they finally, and of course I want to hear your thoughts and opinions, so let me know down in the comments, but do they finally decide, hey, let's leave one of these films off of in a cliffhanger? Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be Scream 7, right? But it would make sense if your goal really is to do a trilogy to have something be a cliffhanger in one of these films. Now, I would probably guess, or I think it would be maybe the smartest route to maybe not have that in Scream 7. One, because Scream 7 fails, right? Like, then you're kind of in this spot. But more than anything is I think like you want to use Scream 7, especially if your plan is really to create a trilogy, to kind of build, establish, and grow everything, right? So you use Scream 7 as like your foundation, right? So Scream 7 is basically your building block, and then you go into Scream 8, and then that one, you kind of have whatever you're going to have in it, and then end on a cliffhanger that carries over to the conclusion and the end of the trilogy, and then now you kind of try to wrap up the trilogy. That is probably my preferred. I'm not saying you can't have a cliff. I mean, you could have a cliffhanger at the end of each film if you wanted to. But I just think you use Scream 7 as the building block. And like, look, like, so like, even talking about like a cliffhanger, right? Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be some huge grandiose thing like, oh my gosh, is Sydney dead? Like, did they just kill her or something like that? It doesn't have to, it could just be something that, say they establish, they've already like laid the groundwork for the cult, right? So like, let's say, okay, you laid the groundwork for the cult, you have maybe Ghostface, and you have like a collective, conclusive movie. Everything ends, everything's good, everything kind of is wrapped up in an elbow, or in a elbow, in a bow. and and then you take that, and then maybe you have like an end scene or something like that where it's like, a computer turns on and it's the dreaded thread, and it's somebody typing like you're next or something, right? And it's like, oh no, like, so you have this conclusive like here's the end type thing, but you know that there's more setup, you know that there's more to come. And like I think that that's even an approach that you could take with this upcoming beginning of a trilogy. Sorry, I just thought of the Randy thing when I was saying that. But um yeah, like I like the idea of like, okay, your first film is the establishment film. Your second film is the build up film that ends in a cliffhanger, and then now you have the third film, which is the conclusion and the end of this current trilogy, that then either just has its full package ending or sets up and establishes going forward, right? Because the talk is that Sydney's daughter would potentially be kind of like the face going forward, right? Like that's kind of the idea. Okay, fine. Right, so maybe you have this conclusion with this like Sydney arc. You give Sydney a happy ending, everything's good, or at least you think. And then now you have it because I mean, look, if Sydney's daughter is gonna keep getting attacked by Ghostface, then she's never gonna have a happy ending, right? So you're never gonna be able to paint Sydney having a happy ending, which is another point as well, right? Like, do you even want to go that route? Because then Sydney's never no, because a lot of people do want Sydney to have an happy ending. Right. So is it kind of one of those things where it's like, she's never going to be able to have that simply on the fact that, like, her daughter keeps being attacked. But I digress. We'll save that for a different day. But I don't know. Like, it's something that I've never really been against having it, like, the end of a shock. And Scream has always done it. Right. So, like, they haven't done it in the sense of, like, a full scene at the end, but at the end of the credits, you get Ghostface slashing in every movie except for Scream 3, right? Like that was the signal that more Ghostface is coming. So they've always had a sort of cliffhanger of like, hey, more is coming. But we've never actually had like that scene where, Ghostface gets away and we know that he's out there, or, like they even wanted to do at the end of Scream 2. Right, Sydney's walking through the field, or not the field, the courtyard, right, in the grass, and it pans up to the bell tower, right? Well, originally there was supposed to be a ghost face up in that bell tower. That's why it panned the way that it did and panned up into the tower, because there's supposed to be a ghost face standing over, which was supposed to be Roman, and then that ultimately didn't happen, right? So to me, it's like you could even do something silly like that, where, again, say you establish the cult, you have like whatever 2 or 3 killers, they end up getting taken out. You think the movie's over, you get like a pan away or something, and then you see a ghost face standing there, right? Like just kind of staring and watching Sydney and her daughter or whatever, and Mark and whoever there, Gail, right? And now like, there's more out there, right? Like this is only the beginning for Sydney. This is only the beginning for just everything, right? Like that I think could be a good, fun, entertaining type of Scream film. And I mean, you could, like I said, you could do it at the end of 7 if you wanted to. I'm not saying you can't do it at all. I just would prefer, personally, like, have your established setup film, make it your Sydney focus film, kind of build on the family dynamic, because I just think you have so much that you're going to need to kind of get through and trench through that. So like, to me, it's just like, okay, kind of get through all that, right? Now you have your clear direction and positioning for the next film. You do that, then you have the build up, boom, ends in a cliffhanger, and then carries over and bleeds into the final film, which now, I mean, you could pick up immediately, you could pick up later. I mean, obviously depending on what the cliffhanger is, but I don't know. I don't hate the idea of a cliff. I've never really have. I've always wanted one, right? If it's executed properly. You don't want to just have one just to have one. Just be like, see, look, we gave you one. No, you want it to fit, make sense, and kind of carry over into the actual story, right? So like, I mentioned Halloween Ends earlier, right? Like the Karen death thing, I thought it was silly and pointless, and it kind of just felt like they did it just to do it. I just, for me, it just didn't hit the way that it did, and that kind of seems to be a lot of people's sentiment. It just kind of felt kind of random, and then it didn't really like pick up anything because you just had this huge time jump, like literally years later, or a year later. So you never got to see any like the aftermath or anything like that. I just don't want that. Like, if you're gonna have a cliffhanger, have it add up, have it make sense, have it fit what you're trying to make it fit. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of like, yeah, you have a cliffhanger, first film, establishment film, second film is your kind of build up that ends in a cliffhanger, and then you have it at the end. Do you want it in Scream 7? Do you think like, no, just have it right out the gate? Do you want it in every film? Right? Let's say they have a trilogy, right? Do you want it in 7 and 8? Again, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Helps me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.